The affluent CEO thrived on solitude and dominance, until the sight of a young girl in a white dress weeping by herself dismantled all his preconceived notions in an instant. Adrien Harper had crafted his existence in the embrace of quietude. In his realm, everything was meticulously arranged, reliably consistent and serene. His penthouse on the 42nd floor offered a view of the city while keeping its clamor at bay, courtesy of bespoke soundproofing. His office was a haven of soft whispers, gentle footsteps, and the faint murmur of the city, forever softened by the thick glass walls. His car moved through the traffic in silence, gliding like a shadow. Adrien didn't merely favor silence. It was essential for him. He held the conviction that noise signified frailty, that disorder shattered concentration, and that tranquility could only be achieved when all distractions were entirely eliminated. With their cries, sticky hands, and unpredictable nature, children had no place in his life. He didn't harbor any animosity towards them. Rather, he perceived them as an entirely different kind of being, untamed, passionate, and boisterous. In that quietude, he meticulously constructed his empire, each brick laid with years of thoughtful strategy and unwavering solitude. That morning, much like the ones before it, unfolded with impeccable precision. He rose at 6, engaged in a workout in his exclusive gym, perused investor reports while savoring a precisely measured cup of espresso, and departed his penthouse promptly at 8:15. The sole divergence from his typical routine was a meeting arranged by his assistant with a prospective partner who requested a neutral setting, a secluded spot in a public park close to the investor's residence. Adrien loathed the notion but conceded, recognizing that the investment justified the hassle. He showed up 10 minutes ahead of schedule as expected. The park exuded an unexpected tranquility on that weekday morning, with trees just starting to blossom and the soft sound of birds chirping above. He lingered by the appointed bench, glancing at his watch, then at his phone, mentally assessing how much longer he could endure the wait. Suddenly, a noise shattered the tranquility he had so meticulously crafted. Initially, it was subtle, far enough to overlook, a gentle whimpering noise drifting through the air. He cast a quick look behind him, irritation brewing, anticipating the presence of a dog. Yet it intensified. It transformed into a sequence of gasping cries, sharp and wavering. Adrien let out a slow breath, fighting the impulse to turn and leave. He was utterly focused, with neither time nor patience for any disruptions. Yet the weeping persisted. Indeed, it was approaching rapidly. With a hint of hesitation, almost contrary to his instincts, he shifted to find the origin. What he witnessed brought him to a standstill. A young girl, perhaps just 3 years old, sat on a bench a short distance away, her knees drawn up to her chest. Her white dress was wrinkled and slightly stained, and her matching white sun hat was tilted to one side. Her delicate hands pressed against her eyes, and her cheeks were stained with tears. Her delicate blonde hair emerged from beneath the hat in a charmingly disheveled manner. She lifted her gaze, as if attuned to his presence, and their eyes locked. Dark eyes, profound, expansive, and unsettlingly recognizable. Adrien stood still, taken aback, not only by the unfolding scene but also by the mysterious attraction that gripped him. She resembled a certain someone, a familiar face from the past, long forgotten until now. Someone whose absence had previously created a void in his otherwise orderly existence, a void he had closed off and never dared to explore again. He urged himself to turn and leave. The girl would become a concern for another, a child adrift, perhaps, or one whose guardian lingered close by. Yet she remained still. No grown-up arrived. And then, in a quivering tone that resonated within him, she asked, Are you Mr. Harper?" His breath hitched. In the park, he kept his name to himself, sharing it with no one. He had taken every precaution to remain a mystery, ensuring that no one could uncover his identity. Yet here she sat, in solitude, calling for him by name. Adrien moved in gradually, heart racing with anticipation. "Indeed," he replied with a hint of hesitation. "May I inquire about your identity?" The young girl brushed away her tears with the back of her hand. Maggie mentioned that you could be stopping by. That name struck him with the force of a lightning flash. Maggie. It simply wasn't possible. Maggie had been the ultimate friend, the trusted confidant, the steadfast presence beside Hazel throughout the months Adrien had attempted to move on. The girl glanced upward once more and softly said, "My name's Lily. I am 3 years old." Then, in a gentler tone, "I believe you might be my father." At that instant, everything shifted. The tranquility he had safeguarded for years fractured like fragile glass, not due to turmoil or calamity, but from the gentle, trembling voice of a small girl in white who bore his gaze. Adrien remained frozen, each rational fragment of his mind racing to find a reason, while his heart thudded erratically within his chest. Lily, the child before him, gazed up with eyes that reflected his own, and despite the shock coursing through him, he couldn't ignore the remarkable likeness. Her voice, gentle and uncertain, resonated in his mind, echoing over and over, "I think you're my dad." For a man who had consistently regarded emotion as mere distraction and unpredictability as a flaw, Adrien now found himself unexpectedly overwhelmed by both. The breeze whispered softly among the branches overhead, yet no one stepped into the light. No hurried guardian showed up. It was merely her presence. Only Lily. She had arrived with the anticipation of his presence. Before he had the chance to reply, a woman rushed across the grass, panting and evidently upset. Her coat was fastened incorrectly, and strands of hair were slipping free from the clip that struggled to keep it all together. As soon as she spotted Adrien beside Lily, her pace faltered, her eyes growing wide with a mix of recognition and unease. "Mr. Harper?" she inquired, her tone hinting that she was already aware of the response. Adrien faced her, his demeanor tight and watchful, a multitude of inquiries brewing beneath his composed surface. "Indeed," he replied with calm assurance. "Indeed you are." With a moment of uncertainty, she shifted her gaze from him to the little girl, then took a step forward. "My name is Maggie. I was a friend of Hazel's. Lily has had her nanny by her side since the very beginning of her life." Upon hearing Hazel's name, a torrent of memories rushed into Adrien's thoughts, overwhelming him like an unexpected deluge. Hazel, the woman who had vanished from his existence without a word of reason. The sole individual who had ever managed to breach the barriers of his existence. It had been 3 long years since he last laid eyes on her. 3 years without the sound of her voice. 3 years without even a single message from her. And now, here was Maggie, a figure linked to that chapter of his life, standing before him with the undeniable evidence of Hazel's absence, delicately wrapped in white lace and tiny trembling fingers. Where could she be? Adrien inquired, fully aware of what the response would be. Maggie's eyes brimmed with tears as she nodded, struggling to swallow. "Hazel has departed from this world.
A colisió involving vehicles.
Only a couple of weeks back. I have been looking after Lily since that time." But she paused, her gaze fixed on Lily, a look of anguish crossing her face. "Before her passing, Hazel revealed all to me. Concerning you, concerning the events that transpired. She requested that if anything were to happen to her, I should seek you out, to bring Lily to your side." Adrien's knees wobbled beneath him, yet he remained steadfast, summoning a facade of calm. The weight of it all was overwhelming. Hazel's passing, the revelation of a daughter he had never met, and the unexpected burden of responsibility that had been dropped into his lap without any forewarning. He gazed down at Lily, who remained quietly by his side, her tiny fingers clutching the hem of his coat. She had not shed another tear. She observed intently, poised in anticipation, as if she innately grasped that her destiny hinged on this very instant. "Why didn't she share that with me?" Adrien's voice had softened, not harsh but filled with exhaustion, a deep-seated pain evident in his tone. "What kept her silent all this time?" Maggie's voice carried a soft yet resolute quality. She had the desire to. It seems she penned letters, perhaps even attempted to reach out by phone. Yet Hazel felt a deep sense of fear. She believed you would distance yourself from her. She expressed that her intention was not to confine you or disrupt your existence. Thus, She took the course of action she believed to be most appropriate. She brought up Lily by herself. However, upon realizing that her time could be limited, she reconsidered her decision. She understood that it was essential for you to be informed. She revealed it all to me. Hazel had a deep-seated trust in you, more than you might realize, even if she never expressed it openly. Adrien paused before replying. The heaviness of the moment settled upon him, as unyielding as rock. His entire existence, meticulously organized and impeccable, founded on unwavering certainty, had suddenly transformed beneath him. Amidst the chaos, a 3-year-old girl with his eyes stood resolutely, observing him not with fear, but with a serene hopefulness that unsettled him more than anything he had ever encountered. He lowered himself, locking eyes with her. "Lily," he said, striving to maintain a calm tone, "would you like to join me for a bit? Perhaps just to grab a bite to eat. Place that radiates warmth." She nodded with unwavering certainty. Understood. In that moment, she gently slipped her small hand into his, as though it was meant to be there from the very beginning. As they strolled away from the park, with Maggie lagging behind, Adrien sensed a fissure beginning to emerge in the barrier he had constructed around his existence. It lacked theatrics, yet it was genuine, a quiet unveiling. He was still uncertain about what this signified. He was uncertain about the role of a father. He was uncertain whether he truly believed he could be. Yet she was present. Hazel had vanished. In that moment, the little girl entered his quiet world and uttered his name as if it were a familiar melody, one she had known for ages. Amidst the chaos, Adrien Harper found an unexpected sense of clarity. He simply sensed a need. Adrien found himself engulfed in an overwhelming sense of unpreparedness, unlike anything he had ever experienced before. In just one afternoon, the familiar routine he had held onto for years crumbled away. In a cozy nook of a small cafe, he found himself facing a 3-year-old girl. His gaze fell upon the untouched cup of black coffee before him, while Lily, with her innocent charm, quietly sipped apple juice through a bright red straw. Maggie lingered close, observant yet quiet, allowing them their distance while still holding on just enough. The young one, his young one, exhibited an unusual tranquility, her tiny legs swaying beneath the table, her gaze exploring the cafe with a serene inquisitiveness. Adrien found himself grappling with two astonishing revelations: the enormity of the secret Hazel had concealed from him, and the uncanny sense of familiarity he felt towards the little girl sitting across from him. He found himself observing her, not merely the eyes that reflected his own or the gentle cascade of her light hair, but the nuanced expressions on her face, the way her lips pressed together in contemplation, and how her brow furrowed when the waitress lingered too long. It was unsettling, akin to observing a mirror of feelings he had meticulously buried over time. And yet she wasn't distant or reserved. She radiated warmth, careful yet courageous, as if in her brief 3 years she had encountered more than many grown-ups could bear. He inquired about her culinary preferences. She replied softly, "Macaroni." "And pancakes, of course." However, not simultaneously. Maggie let out a soft chuckle, while Adrien nodded, gesturing to the waitress. As the food arrived, Lily delicately nibbled at her plate, while he remained quiet, searching for the right words. He struggled with this. He felt uncertain about whether to speak to a child as if they were delicate or as if they were grown-ups. Yet, it appeared that Lily required little encouragement. She shared with him her fondness for clouds and music, mentioning how Maggie sang lullabies each night, despite not being her biological mother. She shared with him memories of a home filled with a piano, lush plants, and a large window that welcomed the sunlight. And when she spoke of Hazel just once, referring to her as mommy in the past tense, his breath hitched. As they stepped out of the cafe and into the refreshing chill of the evening air, Adrien came to a halt on the sidewalk. He cast his gaze upon Maggie. "I must grasp every detail," he asserted with conviction. "All that Hazel shared with you. I seek the whole story, not mere pieces." Maggie gave a slight nod. "I will share all the information I possess. However, this is not the place." She presented him with an envelope. This marked the final correspondence penned by Hazel. She requested that I hand it over to you solely on the condition that you encountered Lily. In the solitude of his apartment, Adrien found himself seated in his office, the letter clutched tightly in his hands. His penthouse, typically a sanctuary of tranquility he had always cherished, now seemed overwhelmingly silent. He could hear Maggie reading to Lily in the guest room he had quickly set up. The soft whispers floating through the air felt like a distant memory from another existence. With trembling hands, he slowly opened the letter. Hazel's handwriting flowed gently, evoking a sense of warmth and recognition. She was the one to say sorry first. For vanishing, for concealing reality, for questioning his integrity. She explained to him that her departure wasn't due to a lack of love, but rather because her love was so profound that it compelled her to leave. She feared he might feel confined, that the man who inhabited a realm of quiet and structure would perceive a child as a danger to that existence. She expressed that she had attempted to reach out to him once but faltered in her resolve. Each day, she gazed into Lily's face, recognizing fragments of him, and questioned whether her decision had been the correct one. And when she fell ill, truly ill, she understood how mistaken she'd been to keep them separated. Hazel wrote that she didn't want Lily to grow up without knowing you. I wished for her to feel valued, never like she was hidden away. My only wish was for her safety. And now, I must place my faith in you to ensure her safety. I understand that you might not subscribe to the idea of destiny, Adrien, but if you find yourself reading this, perhaps there's something greater than us at play in bringing this moment to fruition. Kindly cherish her, not simply because she belongs to you, yet she deserves it. As he completed the letter, Adrien leaned back in his chair, a wave of emotion washing over him. It had been years since he last shed a tear. Not at the time of his father's passing. Not in times of heartbreak. Not when Hazel departed. Yet, at this moment he truly did. Quiet, held-back tears cascaded down his cheeks, burdened by the overwhelming weight of it all. He had lost Hazel once more, and this time it felt irrevocable. Yet he had received something equally tangible, equally unchangeable. A young one, his offspring. He ascended gradually, strolled down the corridor, and paused at the entrance. Maggie lifted her gaze from the pages of the book she was immersed in. Lily was already drifting into slumber, nestled beneath the blanket, her petite form pressed against Maggie's side. Adrien slipped in silently and took a knee beside the bed. For a moment, he simply observed her as she breathed, her expression serene, her hand gently resting against her cheek. He murmured softly, almost inaudibly, "I'm not going anywhere." For the very first time in his existence, he genuinely felt it. As dawn approached, Adrien found himself awake well ahead of his usual time, long before the sun had pierced the dense city skyline. His room remained shrouded in darkness, yet he refrained from grasping his phone or his schedule as was his usual habit. Instead, he reclined there, gazing at the ceiling, attuned not to silence, but to something beyond it. And then he listened closely, the soft patter of tiny footsteps, a delicate melody being hummed that he didn't recognize, and the subtle groan of the guest room door opening down the corridor. It was not mere noise. It was existence. Truly happened. For the first time in as long as he could recall, he found himself without the urge to block it out. He rose gradually, donned his clothes at a leisurely pace, and ventured into a day that had shifted beyond his sole ownership. Maggie was busy at work in the kitchen, crafting breakfast with care. The aroma of scrambled eggs and toast wafted through the air as Lily perched on a counter stool that seemed oversized for her small frame. She playfully kicked her feet against the wooden seat, clad in pajamas adorned with cheerful suns and fluffy clouds. Upon seeing him, a gentle smile graced her lips, yet words eluded her. Instead, she observed him with a sense of intrigue, as if she were still deciphering his significance in her life. He approached her with a soft greeting, caught between the urge to remain nonchalant and the weight of the moment that felt profoundly significant. Rather than getting lost in his thoughts, he simply inquired if she wanted orange juice, and she nodded as if this was a familiar routine they had shared countless times. As Maggie placed the plates before them, Adrien attempted to dismiss the odd sensation of how familiar it already seemed. He was unaccustomed to the presence of another so soon in his surroundings. His mornings often unfolded in solitude, crafted with a focus on efficiency and a quiet ambience. Yet, a dialogue emerged, light and uncomplicated, pondering the merits of strawberries over bananas and the appropriateness of wearing socks to bed. Crumbs scattered across the table. A spoon chimed softly against a glass, and a delicate giggle escaped as he grimaced at a piece of fruit that was just too sour. In some inexplicable way, he found himself unbothered by any of it. Following breakfast, Maggie softly guided him away as Lily entertained herself with her stuffed bunny by the window. Her voice carried a soft, careful sincerity. She shared with him the details of Hazel's last days, the rapid decline of her health, her determination to keep Lily away during her most difficult moments, and the frantic planning that ensued once she understood that survival was uncertain. Adrien absorbed the words in silence, each one weighing heavily on his heart. She conveyed to him that Hazel's love for him had remained unwavering, that her departure stemmed not from rejection but from a deep-seated fear of shattering the bond they shared, fear that she might become a burden in a life she believed he wished to remain unaltered. Maggie acknowledged that she didn't concur with Hazel's decision to maintain the secret, yet she honored her wishes. She expressed that Hazel's deepest sorrow wasn't the illness or the battle, but rather the missed opportunity of allowing Lily and Adrien to share time together from the very start. It was the days they had longed for. Adrien sensed that heaviness embed itself within him. He struggled to come to terms with the reality that 3 years of his daughter's life had slipped by without his presence. Initial strides, initial phrases, initial tears. He had overlooked each and every one of them. And yet, Lily appeared to hold no resentment towards him. She felt no fear in his presence. She was careful, indeed, yet her gaze suggested that she felt he had a rightful place in her life now. Later that day, as Maggie attended to some errands, Adrien whisked Lily away to a quaint little bookstore nearby. It marked the inaugural occasion he found himself in public with her. Just the two of them. Onlookers were taken aback as they spotted the typically reserved and famously stoic CEO tenderly holding the hand of a toddler adorned with pigtails. She selected a book adorned with sparkles on the cover and held onto it as if it were a precious treasure. At the register, she inquired softly, "Could you read it to me tonight?" It was merely a tiny inquiry, yet it took him by surprise. He came to the surprising conclusion that he had never experienced the soothing ritual of a bedtime story. He had never experienced the act of tucking a child in. He nodded, a faint smile crossing his lips, and replied, naturally. That evening, as Lily nestled beneath the cozy blankets in the space that was gradually becoming her own, Adrien settled beside her and flipped open the shimmering book. Initially, his voice came across as rigid, adhering to a familiar cadence, yet Lily appeared unfazed by it. She observed him with bright eyes, grinning as he animated the characters with various voices, even chuckling when he attempted and stumbled in his effort to mimic a talking bear. Upon his conclusion, she refrained from requesting another tale. She softly murmured, "Mommy would read to me just like that. Yet you approach it in a unique way. I appreciate your approach as well." Adrien remained by her side until slumber took her, her small hand gently resting close to his arm. As he finally stood up and ventured into the hallway, he found himself leaning against the wall, engulfed by a wave of emotions. This wasn't about compensating for missed opportunities. It was about beginning at this moment with the resources he possessed. What he had was a little girl, clutching a bunny in one hand and a book in the other, who welcomed him into her world without demanding perfection, only his presence. Simply adore. And Adrien was starting to realize that perhaps, just perhaps, that was something he could offer. The subsequent days fell into a cadence Adrien had not anticipated, one that felt oddly instinctive despite its inherent unfamiliarity. He found himself rising earlier than he typically would, not to dive into emails or gear up for conference calls, but to ensure that Lily had her beloved cereal and that her shoes were on the right feet. The framework he had previously revered was now gently reshaped by the unexpected. With mornings alive with strewn toys, spontaneous laughter, and inquiries that strayed far from the realms of business predictions or market analyses. Rather than resisting, he discovered himself embracing it, as if an alternate version of himself was surfacing from beneath the constraints he had outgrown. He started to observe the tiniest details, like the way Lily's nose crinkled when she focused, the gentle hum that escaped her lips while she colored, and how her whole being appeared to unwind when he held her hand. She approached him with care, uncertain of his place in her life, yet remained receptive, never distant, and with each passing day, a bit more trust blossomed. Adrien was discovering the art of being present in ways he had never envisioned. He discovered that he often interrupted meetings to take calls from Maggie or to video chat with Lily before her nap, and at no point did he experience guilt or shame for placing her needs above a spreadsheet. For the first time, he understood that there was no need to seek forgiveness for simply being human. One afternoon, as Adrien sat in his office poring over contracts, Maggie entered softly and presented him with a folder. Her expression was grave, prompting him to put everything aside without hesitation. She clarified that it was the birth certificate and medical documents of Lily, records that Hazel had preserved but never disclosed. As he turned the pages, he felt a sudden catch in his breath upon seeing his name listed under Father. Hazel had never merely taken on the burden by herself. She had always been aware of his identity as Lily's father, having acknowledged him officially even in times when she couldn't connect with him directly. It was her quiet method of linking them, even in their separation. Within the folder, Maggie had also tucked away a small envelope marked in Hazel's distinctive handwriting. It merely stated for Adrien should he ever arrive. Adrien gazed at it intently for an extended moment before finally deciding to open it. The note was brief, yet it contained all the reassurance he sought. Hazel recounted the evening she discovered her pregnancy, describing how she lingered outside his building with trembling hands, only to walk away, certain he would opt for silence instead of love. She acknowledged her mistake, not in recognizing his true self, but in doubting his ability to make different choices. She captured the essence of Lily's first laugh, her initial word, and the way she held onto the notion of her dad, despite their never having crossed paths. She had always held the conviction that you existed, Hazel penned. She was always certain, and I believe at my core I never truly did either. Adrien perused the letter thrice, each reading deepening his contemplation, before he meticulously folded it and secured it within the confines of the top drawer of his desk. His hands quivered gently, not out of anger or remorse, but from a profound inner turmoil, a moment of reckoning. Hazel had offered him another opportunity. It seemed unjust that she hadn't been there to witness it all, yet he still had the chance to uphold her faith in him. He was still capable of providing Lily with all that she desired. That evening, once Lily had drifted off, Adrien felt compelled to step into her room. He lingered at the bedside, observing the gentle rise and fall of her petite figure with every breath she took. A gentle night light cast a soothing glow across the walls, bathing them in warm, ever-changing hues, while the beloved bunny she clutched was nestled snugly under her arm. He lifted the blanket gently over her shoulders, then settled into the chair across the room, caught in a moment of indecision about whether to stay or go. He lingered in thought, reflecting on Hazel and the heavy price his silence had exacted from him. He had always thought that control was his greatest asset, yet it had prevented him from experiencing the most significant moments of his life. He no longer desired that. He was determined not to overlook anything again. The following morning, he reached out to his legal team. He requested that they initiate the necessary documentation for legal guardianship and adoption. He desired his name on every document not merely for the sake of truth, but to ensure Lily understood she was cherished, selected, not merely a duty taken on by chance. When he expressed to Lily his desire to officially become her father, she tilted her head in that contemplative manner she often did and inquired, "But aren't you already?" He smiled at her, a rush of emotion swelling within, and said, "Yes. However, I now desire to ensure that everyone is aware of it as well." Without uttering another word, she simply extended her arms and embraced him tightly. Adrien embraced her tightly, sensing the delicate pressure of her petite arms and the hope they embodied. He understood that a vast world of knowledge awaited him and that errors were inevitable. Yet in that instant, he let go of his fear, because she had already embraced him, imperfect, unsure, and striving. And that was more than sufficient to get started. Spring arrived gently, caressing the city with warmth and illumination that infused everything with a sense of renewal. For Adrien, the world beyond had always seemed remote, too swift, too noisy, too unpredictable. Yet now he observed the scent of the air following rain, the way the trees outside Lily's window flourished in soft hues, and how every aspect of his existence had gradually transformed into something he had never anticipated. Mornings transformed from a frenzy of meetings to a gentle routine of packing lunch boxes and untangling Lily's hair as she shared her dreams. Evenings transformed into a whirlwind of inquiries, soft laughter, chaotic meals, and the occasional tear. Yet it failed to engulf him, centered him. It provided his existence with contours that seemed tangible despite their flaws. Lily was blossoming rapidly, evolving in ways that left him in awe. She embraced her new surroundings with a remarkable strength and adaptability that only the young seemed to embody. Her presence enveloped each room, not with disruption, but with a warmth that made everything feel more inviting. Adrien observed as she transformed his stark, minimalist environment into a warm, inviting home. The art was askew on the refrigerator, stuffed animals clustered in the corners of the living room, and her shoes perpetually found their way beneath his desk. He never shifted them. He appreciated how they served as a reminder of her presence, that his home had transformed into a shared space. Yet, despite the apparent smoothness of the situation, he could feel an undercurrent beneath Lily's serene facade. She had adapted, indeed, yet there were evenings when she would softly withdraw, perched on the windowsill in stillness, gazing at the stars as though anticipating a voice to break the silence. At times, she would address him as Dad, while at other moments, hesitation would creep in, causing her to hold back. He never compelled. He allowed her to approach him at her own pace, despite the way each uncertain glance pulled at something profound within him. After a long day, Lily suggested having a picnic on the floor instead of at the dining table one night. Adrien nodded eagerly, and they laid out a blanket in the center of the living room, enjoying peanut butter sandwiches and sipping apple juice from delicate teacups. She sat in silence, her fingers absently tracing the edges of her bread's crust. At last, in a soft whisper, she inquired, "Do you believe Mommy would be proud of me if she could see me now?" Adrien sensed the silence enveloping them. He leaned in and softly brushed her hair away from her eyes. He spoke gently, "I believe your mom would be incredibly proud, Lily. It's not solely due to your courage or intelligence, but rather because of the profound love you hold. I believe that's something she bestowed upon you." Lily gazed at him for an extended moment before gently leaning into his side. She remained silent, and he found no need for her words. He encircled her shoulders with his arm, cradling her gently until her breaths became steady and her eyelids fluttered with the weight of impending slumber. He lifted her gently to bed that night, remaining by her side until her breathing deepened into a peaceful slumber, the soothing cadence of her breaths grounding him like nothing else could. As the adoption process progressed, Adrien discovered he was sharing more about Lily with others. His colleagues were taken aback, not only by the revelation of his daughter but also by the depth of his commitment to this new role. One afternoon, he brought her to the office, and rather than feeling out of place in the new environment, Lily strolled alongside him with assurance, hand in hand, greeting everyone they encountered with a wave. She perched in his chair, spinning in delightful circles, before presenting him with a drawing crafted specifically for his office. There they were, two figures intertwined beneath the shelter of a tree, the phrase "my dad" scrawled in unsteady crayon at the top. He no longer displayed business awards. He elegantly showcased that drawing in a frame. What astonished him the most wasn't the extent of Lily's dependence on him, but rather the depth of his own reliance on her. She pushed against his thoughts, unsealed the hidden corners of his heart, and brought forth laughter he hadn't experienced since his youth. She opened him up, and rather than shying away, he embraced it. One evening, after finishing a story and settling her into bed, Lily took his hand and said, "You don't have to be perfect, you know? Your presence is something I truly appreciate." The words lingered in his mind long after she had drifted off to sleep. For a man who had dedicated his life to constructing barriers, Lily was the one who revealed that love wasn't defined by perfect moments or extravagant displays. It was about being there, being acknowledged, and enduring, even in the face of difficulty. Adrien had no intentions of venturing out. Adrien had never set foot in a courtroom for any personal matter. Until recently, his existence revolved around lawyers, contracts, boardrooms, and business disputes, all maintained at a distance, mediated by assistants or legal teams. Yet again, he found himself in a modest wooden chair, within the confines of a small family court, anticipating the moment when a judge would summon him by name. He didn't hold the position of CEO here. He lacked power, wealth, and control. He was merely a man yearning for the title of father, recognized, sanctioned, and without doubt. Lily perched beside him, her legs dangling just above the floor, her fingers gently clutching a small plush rabbit that had been her constant companion since Maggie gifted it to her following Hazel's funeral. She donned a soft yellow dress that Maggie had chosen for the event, her serene expression revealing to Adrien that her mind was busy, despite her silence. Maggie was present as well, positioned a few rows back, providing him with the quiet encouragement she consistently offered. She was more than just a friend to Hazel. She transformed into a connection linking the past and the future, a constant figure who reminded Lily of her origins, while providing reassurance about her path ahead. The court clerk announced their names, and Adrien grasped Lily's hand, leading her softly as they rose and made their way to the front. The judge was a gentle-faced woman in her 50s who offered a smile to Lily before shifting her attention to Adrien, exuding the calm, balanced warmth that comes naturally to those in her role. She inquired about various details: his name, his job, and his reasons for wanting to adopt Lily. He responded to each question with clarity, his voice unwavering, his determination strong. When the judge inquired if Lily was comfortable with Adrien adopting her, she nodded and softly replied, "I already call him Dad sometimes," prompting a smile from the judge. After navigating through a series of legal procedures, it was finally accomplished. In the perception of both the law and society, Adrien Harper held the title of Lily's father. There was an absence of ceremony, music, or applause, yet Adrien sensed a profound change within himself. It felt like a long-lost piece had finally found its rightful home. Lily grasped the weight of the moment, even if it eluded her completely. She tightened her grip on his hand and whispered, "We're a real family now, right?" And Adrien, his voice trembling under the burden of it all, remarked, "We always were." Afterward, they ventured out for ice cream, just the two of them, settling on a bench outside the parlor as they observed the world go by. Lily playfully swung her legs, her excitement bubbling over as she inquired about the possibility of visiting a beach now that they were officially together. She had only encountered the ocean through the pages of books and the frames of pictures, yet her heart yearned to construct a sandcastle and search for seashells. Adrien agreed instantly, only to discover that his desire to experience the ocean through her perspective surpassed any longing for vacations or luxuries he had ever known. Upon returning home that evening, they carefully opened a small envelope that Maggie had handed to them earlier that day. Came from Hazel. It was sealed and dated 3 weeks prior to her passing. Within was a photograph, a vintage print capturing Hazel cradling a newborn Lily in a hospital bed, both weary yet beaming with joy. On the back, Hazel had inscribed a note in her recognizable script, "Adrien, I always knew she'd end up with you. I truly long to have witnessed it." Adrien remained silent for an extended period following his reading of it. He gently cradled the photograph in one hand while holding Lily's tiny hand in the other. Later that night, after she had drifted off, he carefully framed the photo and set it on his desk beside the drawing Lily had created. It wasn't about substituting Hazel or diminishing the sorrow of her absence. It was about cherishing her memory as they embraced the new life they had created. He would always remember her, and he would ensure that Lily remembered her too. She would come to understand that she was profoundly cherished, not only by the mother who brought her into the world, but also by the father who had once doubted his capacity to love. As dawn broke, Lily quietly entered his room, slipping under the blankets to nestle beside him. Without a word, she nestled her head beneath his chin and softly murmured, "Good morning, Daddy." It marked the very first moment she expressed it with unwavering certainty. He shut his eyes and embraced her tightly, fully aware that nothing in his existence, neither the empire he constructed, nor the riches he amassed, nor the power he once grasped, would ever hold more significance than this instant. He had stepped out of the serene realm that once belonged solely to him. He existed solely for her. Summer slipped in softly, ushering in golden mornings and warm evenings that lingered longer than one might expect. Adrien often stirred from his slumber to the soothing cadence of Lily's voice, more reliable than any alarm clock. She would quietly enter his room, clutching her bunny in one hand and a fresh idea in the other. Sometimes it was breakfast in bed crafted from imaginary toast. Other times it was a curious inquiry about clouds, dinosaurs, or why birds never appeared to lose their way. He had never envisioned a life such as this, yet now that it was his reality, the thought of returning to the silence that once characterized him felt unimaginable. His world was richer now, brimming with melodies, joy, the sporadic outburst, and the relentless, exquisite disorder of parenthood. They ventured to the ocean. Lily donned a sun hat that seemed oversized for her head, clutching a plastic pail in each hand, embodying the essence of someone whose task was of utmost significance. Adrien observed her from his seat, his sleeves pushed up with sand slipping through his fingers, and recognized the extent of his transformation. He continued to check emails and make decisions for a company valued in the billions, yet his time was no longer solely dedicated to business. It was in moments like these, observing Lily as she chased the waves and gathered broken shells, each one a precious treasure. She presented him with one molded in the form of a heart and said, "This is for Mommy." She would surely appreciate this one, he thought, nodding silently as he carefully tucked it away in his pocket. Upon returning home, they transformed a corner of the house exclusively for Hazel's delight. Lily came up with the idea. A modest shelf adorned with framed photographs, a selection of her mother's music books, and the heart-shaped shell they had collected from the beach. Each evening, as the day came to a close, Lily would bid it good night, softly sharing her thoughts and wishes in a gentle whisper. Adrien never inquired about her words. It was her realm, her bond, and he honored it. One evening, she looked at him and said, "I believe Mommy would appreciate you now," and he smiled, gently tucking her hair behind her ear. He replied gently, aware that his only option was to continue demonstrating it. The adoption papers had long been signed, yet the essence of their connection had woven itself into the very fabric of their lives, transcending the confines of any legal agreement. They marked their first family anniversary in a simple yet heartfelt manner, just the two of them creating a cake together, turning the kitchen into a delightful chaos, and swaying barefoot to the tune she chose. He allowed her to select the music, despite it being incomprehensible to him. She erupted in laughter, gasping for air as he attempted to twirl her and sent a mixing bowl crashing to the floor. In that laughter, in that shared moment, he glimpsed the future, flawed, spontaneous, and entirely their own. Adrien began implementing changes in the workplace. He established a foundation in Hazel's honor, dedicated to assisting single parents and children navigating the challenges of grief. He chose not to reveal it through a press release or interviews. He subtly guided resources, assembled a team, and allowed the results to convey their own story. It seemed significant in a way that figures and transactions never were. One evening, as he tucked Lily in, he shared the story with her, and she inquired if they could assist other children in locating their absent fathers. He pressed his lips gently to her forehead and declared, "That's the plan." As the season progressed, Lily started referring to him as Dad consistently. It had become clear and resolute, felt effortless. It was genuine. Each time she uttered those words, Adrien sensed them settle in his chest, heavy with the weight of a promise. He continued to face difficult days, often doubted himself, and remained afraid of disappointing her. Yet, each embrace at night, every chuckle in the morning, and every artwork haphazardly affixed to his office wall served as a reminder that love transcended the notion of perfection. It was about being there, about stepping forward even in uncertainty, about remaining steadfast amidst both chaos and beauty. One evening, after sharing a tale and dimming the light, she softly murmured in the shadows, "Thank you for discovering me." He took his time to reply. His throat constricted, and his heart swelled with emotion. Ultimately, he expressed his gratitude for the opportunity. As she slipped into slumber, her hand nestled in his, Adrien lingered for what felt like an eternity, observing the gentle rhythm of her breath, fully aware that this serene, unremarkable moment was the most remarkable experience he had ever known. He devoted his existence to pursuing mastery, tranquility, and achievement. At this moment, he discovered tranquility in the unexpected, in the clamor, in affection. And the man who once shunned every emotional risk had realized that the true treasure lay not in what he had constructed, but in the person he had evolved into. Neither the CEO, nor the millionaire, nor the individual who shied away from connection. He was the father of Lily, in the life they now embraced that held profound significance. To me, the conclusion of this narrative is precisely what it required: subtle, profoundly moving, and brimming with well-deserved optimism. It avoids relying on dramatic twists or extravagant gestures, instead discovering its strength in subtle, personal moments that hold significant meaning. Adrien's evolution is neither abrupt nor flawless. It reveals itself slowly, shaped by unease, sorrow, and a depth of affection he never imagined he could possess. The beauty of the conclusion lies in its refusal to erase past pain. Instead, it embraces that pain, learns from it, and constructs something more resilient in its stead. Lily's presence reveals a side of Adrien that he was unaware of, and witnessing his transformation into that role, not out of obligation but from a genuine choice, is profoundly touching. The narrative illustrates that family transcends mere biology or legal ties. It embodies dedication, bonds, and the bravery to be present each and every day. Ultimately, Adrien's heroism isn't defined by his wealth or success. Rather, it stems from his ability to be present, embrace vulnerability, and open himself to love wholeheartedly. For me, that's the most impactful way to conclude a story.